The bear led police on a low-speed chase. You can see the animal moving through the neighborhood and eventually running off.
The close encounters with coyotes are becoming more frequent.
Black bear is captured on camera, hanging out in a hammock.
Take a look at this, a bobcat spotted in a backyard in Woodbridge. And this time of the year, as you know, the weather getting a bit warmer.
Yeah.
You're going to be seeing more and more animals outside.
All right, so it's not uncommon to hear stories about coyotes wandering around backyards, moose sightings on the highway, deer in grocery stores. It's in the news all the time. And as the lines between the animal kingdom and the human world continue to blur, the stories of animal encounters are on the rise. So what's causing it, and how can you protect yourself? Here to offer some insight is Ed Ricciuti, author of the book Bears in the Backyard. Ed, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for letting me be on.
Yeah, it seems like more and more we're talking about this, these wild animals who are not only coming, closer to people, their homes, also in urban areas. Why is this happening?
Yeah, it's a phenomenon that's been going on maybe for 20 or 30 years. People used to attribute it to urban sprawl, that is, people moving into wildlife areas. But as I talk about in the book, it's a two-way street. Since conservation programs in the wild have been successful, populations of large animals like bears and coyotes and mountain lions or cougars have increased. And so they're overflowing and meeting the traffic of people coming out of urban areas, meeting it both ways.
Is there anything that's being done to keep the animals in the wild, or is this kind of unavoidable?
No, it's nothing's being done to keep them in the wild. Things are being done to perhaps control their numbers when they conflict with people. But really, you don't want to push them back.
Sure. So in the book you talk about all different animals, not just in Connecticut, really around the globe. So we're going to break it down a little bit. We're going to go through some of them. First, let's talk about cougars. There's more cougar attacks. Why is this happening?
Cougars have increased in some of the western states. Like there's a focus in the Dakotas of a large cougar population. California is overflowing with cougars. And as they increase, there's not room for them in the wilderness areas. So as I say, they move towards cities and they encounter people, and you get people and a big cat, and there's going to be attacks.
What do you do if a cougar?
With cougars, the standard advice was not to run, try to look larger than you are, and discourage the attack. Lately, there's been some research that's indicated that in some cases running might be a good idea. But as far as I'm concerned, if you run from a big predator, that's going to trigger its prey response. That animal's going to chase you.
I feel like, right?
That's why cougars often chase joggers or bicyclists. A number of attacks have happened when people jog through wilderness areas or big parks.
Similar to coyotes, which I'm hearing in the news that are becoming a little bit more aggressive.
Well, coyotes are becoming more aggressive for two reasons. One is that as they become used to people who feed them or let the garbage out, where coyotes come to people as a food source, they lose their fear of people. But in the Northeast particularly, we've got a real new type of coyote. It's called the coy wolf. Coyotes, as they moved east from the west and came through Canada, interbred with gray wolves or perhaps eastern wolves. There's a lot of thought on which is which. Wow. And so now we've got in Connecticut big animals that are the size of a large German shepherd or a small wolf. And the wolf genes in these coyotes have made them much more fearsome animals.
You want to keep your dogs inside, right?
You want to keep your dogs inside. You want to keep inside.
Sure. And you say the most, well, I'm going to ask you, the most dangerous animal is a little bit surprising.
Well, in terms of statistics, your white-tailed deer is
the white-tailed deer, I mean, we see them all the time.
Nice Bambi. Bambi's dangerous. Accidents, motor vehicle accidents with deer kill about 200 people a year, injure about 30,000. Wow. There are about between 1 and 2 million accidents every year in the United States involving deer. The damage is about $4 billion. And perhaps even worse, deer are involved in the spread of Lyme disease.
Oh, right.
And The Federal Centers for Disease Control finally have admitted that there's a lot more Lyme disease in this country than they would previously state. I mean, they've upped it by a factor of 10, from 30,000 cases that they recognized to 300,000 cases.
Yeah, my vet was just saying that he diagnosed it in dogs about 12 times a day. He said about 85% of dogs, so that's prevalent. And lastly, let's talk about moose, because we're seeing them more often in Connecticut.
Yeah, Connecticut, there's dispute about the original range of the moose, on how far south the moose came. But before European settlement, Connecticut was probably at the fringes of its southern range, and moose populations up north have increased. The same story. They moved south, they moved into Massachusetts, in Connecticut, and moose, if you hit a moose, there's a good chance you're going to die, if you hit one in a car, that is. Right. But a male moose in rut can be a dangerous animal. They've attacked and killed and injured people seriously. Right. And occasionally females will try to protect their calves. So it's a good idea to enjoy moose from a distance,
right?
Yeah,
and you know, I know you've done a lot of research with this book. What made you write it and put it all together?
Well, back in the 70s, wildlife biologists first began to realize that there were animals coming into the urban areas, but they were mostly small critters like raccoons and such. But scientists began to take notice of this, and I started keeping track of incidents. I wrote a book back then on the wildlife in New York City, but again, it was dealing with little creatures. It was an interesting exercise, but it wasn't as exciting because at that time there weren't any large animals.
Well, now we're seeing it more and
more,
right?
But now it kept tracked and it's going on.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, where can we find the book? Just about anywhere?
Just about any place books are sold, but I always say, please try to support your independent, local bookseller.
Very good. The name of the book again, Bears in the Backyard, and of course we'll have a link over on WTNH.com. Just click on Style. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much.